Okay, we're doing Daf Yomi from the Koren Talmud Bavli. The commentaries and the translation are mostly from Rav Adin Steinsaltz. Occasionally I will interject something that is not in the Koren Talmud Bavli, and this is not to be taken as an authoritative or an official presentation of the Koren Talmud Bavli of Rav Adin Steinsaltz. It is merely my own initiative, and mistakes will be made. But if it makes sense to you, it makes sense to you. So, we're talking about keeping clean, and when one prays, and the unfortunate incidents of somebody losing control of their bladder during the silent standing prayer. It's important to remember that one stands in the silent standing prayer. One is not supposed to move. One's supposed to stand with his feet together, or some opinions say slightly apart, but still he's not allowed to move his feet from his place. The Mishnah said before that even if a snake was wound around his ankles, he shouldn't move. That's, of course, he knew it was a... we're assuming that this is not a poisonous snake, because it's a case of pikuach nefesh. If there was a chance that the person would die, we suspend the loss of the Sabbath, and we also suspend one prayer. We suspend one prayer so you can pray many times. However, that's the way of the Gemara saying that even in a very serious situation, you still pray. Unless there's times not to pray. There's times when we need to act. We don't pray once, so we can pray many times later on. That having been said, you'd think that somebody loses control of their bladder, that they stop praying, they go to the bathroom and wash up and change their pants. If somebody can do that, fine. If they can't do that, let's say one's in a public place, what can they do? Very poor guy lost control. Poor woman lost control. So the main thing is that a person has a belt on, and the belt is separating his upper half from his body from his lower half from the body, so the law is, according to the Gemara here, that if one has such an unfortunate incident of urination, then he should just continue his prayer, read to the end, and afterwards he go find a way to clean himself up. The Gemara notes that, let us say, there's two different opinions. One opinion said, the question is, where do you return to in the prayer? One opinion says you stop the prayer, and you just wait till the flow of urine ceases, and the person waits until the flow ceases, and then he continues. And the other opinion is that he has to go back to the beginning of the prayer and start over again. So it could be that they disagree about this. Mar Savar, now I'm starting the daf, and daf chaf bet, chaf gimel, amud aleph, page 23, amud aleph. Mar Savar im shaha kedei ligmor et kula chozer l'rosh, Mar Savar l'makom shebasag. One rabbi says that he goes back to the beginning, another rabbi says that he just stops and he continues from where he left off. Okay, Amar Rav Ashi, hi im shaha, im lo shaha mi bayale. Rejecting this possibility of what was just said, Rav Ashi said, if that was the point of the dispute, if the dispute was whether or not that one interrupted his prayer and delayed continuing his prayer for an interval sufficient to complete the entire prayer, and the other said he returns to the beginning of and again, one sage held that as a rule, if one interrupted his prayer and delayed continuing his prayer for an interval sufficient to complete the entire prayer, ad shaha kedei ligmor et kula, then what does he do? He returns to the beginning. In other words, if the problem happened that it was long enough for him to complete the whole prayer, then he goes back. Another sage says he returns to his place of the prayer where he stopped, meaning just he stops, waits for it to finish, and then he continues. Rav Ashi rejects this possibility and says, if that was the point of their dispute, they should not have simply issued a ruling in the case. They should not have simply issued a ruling in the case. He says, im lo shaha mi bayale. If he delayed, they should have also addressed the case if he did not delay. They should have simply issued a ruling in a case if he had delayed. They should have also addressed a case if he did not delay, as well as discussing the length of the delay. So there's three things here. According to Rashi says, Hi im shaha. It's not enough to just issue a ruling in a case if he delays. In other words, he stops long enough to finish the prayer. He should also issue a ruling if he did not delay. Meaning, and they should also discuss the length of the delay. Rather, everyone, both Rav Chisda and Rav Hamnuna, agree that if one delayed continuing his prayer for an interval sufficient to complete the entire prayer, then he returns to the beginning of the prayer. V'hasam b'delo shaha kamipalgi. Demar savar gavra de chuya hu ve'en ra'ui. Ein tfilato tfila. Mar savar gavra chazya hu u'tfilato tfila. And there, in the dispute under discussion, they disagreed with regard to one who did not delay that long. The dispute deals with this particular predicament. And one sage held that he is a man who is disqualified and unfit. The presence of the urine disqualifies him, and he has to, his prayer is no longer a valid prayer. He's going to have to pray again. Because he came into contact with something unclean. So he has to repeat it in its entirety. It's interesting that it doesn't say he has to go and clean himself. Maybe that's a foregone conclusion, or maybe the Gemara understands that he's in a place where he just simply can't do that. So, and the other sage says he's a man who is fit and his prayer is a valid prayer. So one says that the urine will invalidate his prayer, and the other says that the urine will not invalidate his prayer. And Rav Chisda and Rav Hamnuna. We assume that Rav Chisda is the first opinion and Rav Hamnuna is the second opinion. It's that because he doesn't exactly say the names, there's always a little suffix saying which is which. Why didn't he say it specifically? But let's assume, and it may be wrong, but let's assume that Rav Chisda is the one who says that he's unfit, and that Rav Hamnuna says he's the one he was fit. Rav Chisda, he didn't pray, he has to pray again. Rav Hamnuna, he prayed, he doesn't have to pray again. So he can just stop and continue once it's over. Make a pause in his Amida prayer. Tanu Rabbanan hanitzrach lenarkav la'alit pelel v'im tebel tfilato toeva. The sages taught in a Braita, one who needs to relieve himself may not pray, and if he prayed, his prayer is an abomination. Amar Rav Zvid v'itemer Rav Yehuda lo shanu ela she'enu yachol lishahot batzmo, aval im yachol lishahot batzmo tfilato tfilah. Rav Zvid and some sort of Yehuda said in qualifying this statement, they only taught this halacha in a case where one cannot restrain himself, hold it in. But if he can restrain himself, his prayer is a valid prayer, and he is not tarnished by his need to relieve himself. Vad kama amar Rav Sheshet ad parsa. The Gemara asks, for how long must he be able to restrain himself? Rav Sheshet said, for as long as it takes to walk one parsang. Some teach this halacha directly on what was taught in the Braita. The Braita says, in what case is the statement said? Where is he unable to restrain himself? Where he is unable to restrain himself. But if he is able to restrain himself, his prayer is a valid prayer. And for how long? Rav Zvid says, for as long as it takes to walk one parsang. Now, what in the world is a parsang? A parsang is a Persian mile. Rabbi Steinsaltz notes, where is his note? As long as it takes to walk one parsang, or in Hebrew, hiluch parsa. The determination of the length of time necessary to walk a parsang is connected to the disagreement with regard to the basic unit of the measurement. The time necessary to walk a Talmudic mil. Now there's a mil, which is a word from the Talmud, and there's a mile, which is perhaps a Roman word. the Talmudic mil is a unit of distance related to, but not identical with, the Roman mile, from which it received its name. So a mil is equal to 2,000 cubits. That would be 960 meters, perhaps, or 1,049 yards, according to Rav Avram Chaim Nai, or 1,150 meters, that is to say 1,258 yards, according to the Chazon Ish. As we said before in the previous year, the shorter measurements are from the expert Rabbi Nai, and the longer measurements of the maximum size that we establish for measurements are according to the Chazon Ish. The fundamental problem lies in the method used to determine a person's regular walking pace. So, according to the various opinions, the time it takes to walk a parsong is either 1 hour. So let's say we know it's 2,000 cubits, and a cubit is what? 52 centimeters, 54 centimeters. We don't know exactly. We know that a cubit is, from the end of the middle finger all the way to the end of the elbow. That's a cubit. The question in terms of the precise measurements, let's call it 54, and you can correct me on that. There's a long measurement and a shorter measurement, so we don't know exactly. We need to find this out. Roughly 2 meters equals 4 cubits. Okay? So 2,000 cubits, that's a Talmudic mil. How long does it take to walk that far? There are different opinions. Depends how fast a person walks. How long does an average person walk? According to various opinions, the time it takes to walk a parsong is either 1 hour and 12 minutes or 1 hour and 36 minutes. You can get out your stopwatches and your odometers and figure it out for yourself. So, but according to the rabbis, again, we're talking about between an hour and 12 minutes or an hour and 36 minutes. So again, what does that have to do with the price of eggs? That's how long. The question was, how long does a person need to be able to restrain himself to still pray? An hour. If a person can wait for an hour and 12 minutes at least, then a person can wait for an hour and 12 minutes, then he prays, he davens, he stands to immediate, he doesn't and again, we're talking about either number 1 or number 2. So, if he can't wait that long, he shouldn't pray. Then his prayer would be an abomination, a to'eva. Amar Reb Shmuel bar Nachman Rabbi Yochanan hanitzrach ninknen kavav harizeh lo yitpalel mishum shneamar hikon likrat Elohecha Yisrael. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonatan said, one who needs to relieve himself may not pray because it is stated, prepare to greet your God, O Israel. This is from the 4th chapter of Amos, the book of Amos. So if you want to find that verse and learn it, which is a good idea, you want to learn a verse in Hebrew, go to the book of Amos, chapter 4, and look up the verse, prepare to greet your Lord, prepare you, O Israel. Hikon likrat Elohecha Yisrael. And one must clear his mind of all distractions to prepare to receive the Lord during his prayer. Now, this verse is often used to teach that we are supposed to prepare ourselves to pray. One is supposed to dress properly. You're not supposed to wear a t-shirt unless you have absolutely nothing else to wear. One is supposed to... Some people put on a jacket. That's a beautiful thing to do. At least one should dress presentably the way you would present yourself in front of your grandparents, let's say, or in front of your parents if at the dinner table. Let's say. So if you happen to have parents who let you sit at the dinner table in your underwear, then maybe you should be a little stricter than you would be before your parents. However, if you have parents who expect you to dress in a reasonable way, then you should also dress in a reasonable way when you're standing before a fortiori How much more so should we stand in a reasonable way with talit and with tefilin and with a decent shirt on, clean pants when we're standing before God? And okay, so people say God made me. God's with me everywhere. He knows what I look like without my clothes on. What does it matter? No, clothing shows respect. We wear clothes not just for warmth, but also to show respect. So we dress in a respectful way when we stand before the one who's giving us everything in the world that we so desperately want and need. So so part of this preparation for prayer is relieving oneself. It's a good thing to do. It's a mitzvah. One has to relieve himself before he prays in the morning. Because when one wakes up, generally a person needs to relieve himself. Okay, there could be some cases where some people are different and they could actually... The law is, again, if you can wait for an hour and 12 minutes without having any discomfort, just only mild discomfort, but nothing serious, then you could actually pray before relieving yourself. However, it's in the morning it's better for one to relieve himself and then pray. I understand some people's digestion is different. Some people have slow digestive systems. So we're talking about urination and not number 2. So this is it's not just because somebody hasn't moved his bowels in the morning does not mean that he is not permitted to pray unless it is disturbing him. Okay. In this context, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yochanan, my diktiv shmor raglecha kasher telech el beit Elohim. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonatan said, what is the meaning of that which is written, guard your foot when you go to the house of God? And the verse continues, and prepare to listen, it is better than when fools offer sacrifices, as they know not to do evil. That's from the 4th chapter of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. It means, when you enter the house of God, Shmor atzmacha shelo techata, guard yourself from transgression. Ve'im techata, have karban lefanai. And if you commit a transgression, bring a sacrifice before me, with a capital M, in atonement. The verse continues, V'karov lishmo divrei chachamim, and draw near to listen to the words of the wise. What is the words of the wise if not the sages of the Talmud? Rava said, Amar Rava, Heve karov lishmor divrei chachamim she'im chotim mevim karban v'osim tshuva. Rava said, be prepared to hearken to the words of the wise, who, if they commit a transgression, they bring a sacrifice and repent. Somebody who is wise, who is respecting, if they also make mistakes, and they make a mistake, they commit a transgression, they break the Torah somehow, inadvertently, God forbid it, intentionally. And so what does he do afterwards? A wise person, he lost his wisdom for a moment, and he broke the Torah. Happens. All men are inherently flawed. So even a great man makes a mistake. What does he do? He admits he did wrong and he brings something to atone. Okay. And they make tshuva, they admit they're wrong to God, they resolve not to do it again, and if the tshuva gemora, they never actually do it again. Now, and then the verse continues, Mitat ksilim zavach. Mitat haksilim zavach. It is better than when fools give sacrifices. That one should not act, and what does that mean? It is better than when fools give sacrifices. What does it mean? It is better than when fools give sacrifices. Alti kaksilim shechotim uvim karban v'enosim tshuva. Fools what will they do? They'll sin, and they'll say, oy vavoy, I did the wrong thing, and they'll bring a sacrifice, meaning they'll they'll go to shul and say a whole book of tefillin, or they'll give tzedakah to the poor, or something like that, but afterwards they go back and do the same wrong thing. Oh, oy vey, Moshe ate a ham sandwich. He couldn't resist it. He didn't know it was ham. I don't know. Or he did know it was ham. Moshe ate the ham sandwich. Oy vey! He goes to shul. He says the whole book of tefillin. He says, God, I'm sorry. And then what does he do that night? He's atoned for. What does he do? He's walking down the street. There's the ham sandwich store. There it is. Just can't hold back. Okay, that's called a ksil. That's what King Solomon meant when he said, mitet kaksilim zavach. Mitet is the gift of the kaksilim, the gift of the fools, zavach. It's better than when a fools give sacrifice, is a better translation. That's why we need the Koren Talmud Bavli translation. So, let's continue. Ki enam yodim la'asot ra. The end of the verse says, and they know not to do evil. What in the world does this mean? Ihachi tzadikim ninu. The Gemara said, if they don't know how to do evil, then they're tzadikim. What in the world could the verse mean? Ela al tiye kaksilim sherotin mevim karban. Enam yodim im ala tova hem meviim al im lo ala ra hem meviim. Do not be like fools who commit a transgression and bring a sacrifice, but are unaware whether they are bringing it as a thanks offering for good or as an atonement for the evil. This is the meaning of the verse. And they know not to do evil. They know not if when their actions are evil. They know not if and when their actions are evil. With regard to these individuals, it says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ben Tov L'Ra Enam Mavchinim. They cannot distinguish between good and evil. Vehem Mivi'im Karban Lefanai. And they who can't distinguish between good and evil come and bring a sacrifice before me. So a fool is somebody who does something and he has no concept of its morality, of its ethics, whether it's a good thing he's doing or it's not a good thing he's doing. It's sitting in a bar. Is it a good thing because I'm making people happy, telling jokes to my friends, or is it a bad thing because basically I'm in debt and I'm running up a bar tab? And why is it that people without any money are always running up bar tabs? It's about the most ridiculous thing in the world, you know? Okay. Anyhow, it's sad. It's sad. But the Gemara continues. Rav Ashi v'itema Rav Hamnuna bar Papa Amar Shemor nakavecha b'sha'a she'ata omed b'tefila lefanai. Rav Ashi and some say Rav Chanina bar Papa said, mind your orifices when you stand before me in prayer. Meaning, one should be careful to relieve himself before prayer. Tanu Rabbanam hanichnas lebet hakiseh choletz tfilav Berakhot arba amot v'nichnas amar Rav Acha bar Rav Hamnuna. So again, let's say that first little sentence first. The sages taught one who enters a bathroom must remove his phylacteries at a distance of 4 cubits and enter. Rav Acha, Amar Rav Acha bar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Sheshet, Lo shanu ele bet kiseh kavua, aval bet kiseh arai, choletz v'nifne la'alter, u'kishu yotzeh, merchik arba amot u'manichim, Manichin, lifnei she'asa'o beta kiseh kavua. So Rav Huna said that Rav Sheshet said this was only taught with regards to entering a regular bathroom, but one who enters a makeshift bathroom may remove his phylacteries and defecate immediately. But when one exits from a makeshift bathroom, he must distance himself 4 cubits before donning his phylacteries, because he has now rendered that a place of a regular bathroom. Ibailahu ma'u shikanes adam b'tefilin lebet kiseh kavua lahashtin ma'im Ravina Shari Rav Adabar matana asar atu shailuhu l'Rava Amar lahu asor chayshinan shema yifne behen v'amir la shema yafiach behen. A dilemma was raised before the sages in the yeshiva. They were sitting in the yeshiva in Babylon, and they were sitting around and saying, we have a dilemma before us. What is the halacha? May one enter a regular bathroom wearing his phylacteries in order to urinate? The sages disagreed. Ravina permitted to do so, while Rav Ada bar Matana prohibited it. They came and asked this of Rava. They said, well, we don't. Ravina said one thing, Rav Ada bar Matana said no, Ravina said yes. So they said, okay, we're going to go to Rava, who is greater than us, and we're going to let him decide. Rava said to them, it is forbidden, because we are concerned lest he will come to defecate with them still on, which would be a chilul Hashem. That would be a desecration of God's name. Others say that this halacha is because we are concerned that since he is already in the bathroom, he might forget that his phylacteries are on his head and will break winds with them while still wearing them, which is also a serious sign of disrespect for God and for man. For God if no one else is around. Breaking wind from another person is a sign of serious disrespect for the other person. People with no sense of respect or kavod for another person or for themselves will just break winds wherever in front of anybody. But people who have a sense of respect for others and an appreciation that God is with them will go to the bathroom and close the door, and so as not to disturb another human being. And in that way he shows his love of man leads to a love of God. I was at the Kotel once, and I think a few times I've removed my tefillin and gone to the bathroom and there's a difference between the number one and number two. Number one, urinating. Number two, defecating. So I was under the impression, and I still am, that if somebody needs to urinate, he removes his tefillin and he goes to urinate. However, this is a sign of respect. There are certain very, very, very religious people in Jerusalem who they are so religious that they wear tefillin all the time. And they down at the Kotel, I'm going to the stall and I'm relieving myself, and I look next to me and there's another guy relieving himself in his tefillin. He's wearing his tefillin and he's relieving himself. He had covered them up. I saw the straps, but he covered up his tefillin, or maybe, and then he walked back to the Kotel. I didn't approach him, but I had this discussion with his rabbi about, I saw him in the street, and I said, "Excuse me, I saw one of your students urinating in his tefillin. What gives?" So he tried to prove to me, according to the law, that it was perfectly mutar, and even quoting one of the great Lithuanian rabbis of Jerusalem who did. And according to this Gemara, if it's a makeshift bathroom, it might be permitted as long as he covers up his tefillin. I don't think a urinal that's built into the wall is considered a makeshift bathroom. It's built into the wall, and it's being used for years and years. So the correct thing to do is not like this very, very religious man who is so religious he has to wear his tefillin all day. I understand wearing tefillin at a time when one is praying. I can understand and support a person wearing his tefillin while he's studying Torah. However, if a person has a bad stomach, or if a person might be passing gas, or if a person would need to go to the bathroom on a regular basis, clearly he should not be wearing his tefillin. And some people, out of respect, they only would wear tefillin at a holy time, and of course they wouldn't wear tefillin just walking to the makolet. Some people think they're very holy and they can go to the makolet and take out the trash and do this and that while wearing their tefillin. That's foolish. They might as well be putting rocks on their head, and they're creating bad vibes around them. Okay, the Gemara continues. Bevigdot sal kadatach. No, sorry. Tanya idach. Anichnas lebet kise kavua choletz tefilin berakhot kabar amos menichan bachalon asamuch lereshut rabim menichnas b'shu yotze. So another Braita says a person enters a regular bathroom, he removes his phylacteries at a distance of 4 cubits. He places them in the window on the wall of the bathroom, adjacent to the public domain, and then enters. In other words, there's a bathroom in the middle of nowhere. You don't have tefillin. What do you do? So there's a window that opens up to the public domain. So it's not exactly inside the bathroom, because you're not supposed to have your tefillin even not on your head, even not on your arm and on your head. You're not supposed to have your tefillin in the bathroom, right? And then when he exits, he must distance himself. He says, when he goes out, he must distance himself 4 cubits before donning them. This is the statement of Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel omrim, o chazan biyado v'nichnas. Beit Shammai says, Beit Hillel says, he removes his tefillin, but he can hold them in his hand while he goes into the bathroom. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ochazan bevigdo v'nichnas. Rabbi Akiva says he can't just hold them in his hand, he has to cover them up with his garment. He can wrap them in his garment a bit, put them under his shirt, whatever. And this is a case where he doesn't have any safe place to put them. He doesn't have somebody to watch them. He's alone. And somebody could either steal them or there's another he needs to guard his tefillin. So what does he do? If you're in an airport, this is a psak halacha, practical halacha. You're in an airport and you can't leave your bags around. You can't leave your bag just outside the bathroom stall. You go in and you close the door and you leave it outside. Somebody might walk off with your bag, or the police will see it and get upset. You have to keep your bags with you. So you keep your tefillin is in your bag. So first of all, if it's covered up double, you make sure that your tefillin are not only in the bag, because it's a mitzvah to have your tefillin in a special bag, a special honorable bag, and then not only that, you make sure they're in another bag. So if they're double wrapped, that's one thing. The other thing is, because a person is using the toilet where the human waste is going into the water, that only that's neutralizing the prohibition of the tefillin being around human waste. So, in other words, like if the law is, if there's a little kid makes a pee-pee in the shul, there's sometimes a 2-year-old. It happens. Kids running around his shul. Kids, they don't have, little kid, he doesn't have any brains. He needs to take a pee-pee. It happens. He does it. I saw it even happen at the kotel once. And what's the law? It's very simple. If you know the law, you go, you get a revis of water. You get at least 86 cc's of water. Half a cup, standard cup. It's like less than half of this. And you pour it onto the puddle, and that neutralizes it. So it's the same thing with the bathroom. If it's a place, one shouldn't kid themselves. If it's a place where it's not a problem, where he leaves his bag outside the bathroom, he can leave his bag there. If it's not a dangerous place, or if there's no reason that is reasonable reason not to leave them there, such as in an airport. So manichin b'chorin v'smuchin lebeit hakiseh. V'lo yanichem b'chorin v'smuchin l'rshut rabim shema yitzlu atam ovrei drachim v'yavo lidei chashad. The Braita says, if there's room to place them, he places them in the holes adjacent to the bathroom, but he does not place them in the holes adjacent to the public domain, lest the phylacteries will be taken by the passers-by, and he will come to be suspect. Meaning he will be suspect. Somebody else takes his tefillin and he's suspect. Requires further study. Maaseh b'talmid echad she'iniach tefilah b'chorin smuchin l'rshut rabim uvat zona achat u'netaltaha uvat the Beit HaMidrash v'amra ra'u ma natan li ploni b'schari. So this happened back in Babylon around 2,000, maybe a little less than 2,000 years ago. A student placed his phylacteries in the holes adjacent to the public domain. And a prostitute passed by and took the phylacteries. She came to the study hall and said, "See what so-and-so gave me as payment." When the student heard this, the student heard this, he was shocked. He ran up to the roof, and he fell off the roof and died. An accident, or out of shame, who knows, but whatever, let's say it was an accident on the scale of merit. He was just shocked out of the shame that even somebody would accuse him of doing such a thing, and that his friends would they're his tefillin, and this, he might have been the biggest saint in the world, never biggest, most righteous man in the world, never even looked at a prostitute, but the thought that the shame that he would be considered having done such a thing, or his own fear of being like, what if God forbid I did such a horrible thing, that shame and that fear drove him to a serious state of shock, so much so that he fell off the roof and died. That moment they instituted באותה שעה התקינו שיהיה אוחזן בבגדו ובידו ונכנס. That moment the sages instituted that one should not leave them in the hole or in the windowsill, but he should actually fold them up in his garment and go in, like the modern law with the airport. Tanu Rabbanan Barishona hayu menachin tefilin b'chorin asmuchin lebeit hakisei abayim achbarim v'notnin otan. Where was a problem with the mice? Maybe mice will come and they will take them, and that happens. So what they made a solution for that. So the sages said, put it in the windows facing the public domain, outside, facing the area outside the bathroom. So, and then people were passing by and said, "Oh, free stuff," and took the tefillin. Then they established that a person can cover up the tefillin, cover them up twice, and go inside the bathroom. Amar Rav Miyasha, Rabbi Miyasha, Rabbi meaning he's from the land of Israel. Rabbi Miyasha, Bereder Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, the son of Yoshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Halacha golalan kemin sefer ovo chazan bimino keneged libo. The halacha is you have to roll them up like a book, like a scroll, and chazan bimino, and hold them in his right hand and against his heart. This is what it looks like to roll them up like a scroll. So, I'm a Rabbi Miyasha Bereder Rav Yeshua. Halakha golan kimin sefer, you roll them like a scroll and you hold them in your right hand against your heart. Amar Rav Yosef bar Manyume, Amar Rav Nachman, Vilvad she lo ti'e ritzua yotzet mitachet yado tefach. Rav Yosef bar Manyumi said that Rav Nachman said, this is provided that the strap of the phylacteries does not emerge more than a handbreadth below his hand. Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha said, Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha Amar Rabbi Zera lo shanu ela sheyesh shahut b'yom lelav shan aval ein shahut b'yom lelav shan oseh lehem kamin kis tefach humanichan. Rav Yaakov bar Acha said that Rabbi Zera said it was only taught that one roll up his phylacteries where there is still time in the day left to don them. If there's not time in the day left to don them before nightfall, when the phylacteries are not donned, he makes a one handbreadth pouch of sorts for them and places them in them. A one handbreadth pouch. What in the world could this mean? Let's quickly take a look at Rashi on the next, on the other side of the book. The chalalo tefach. You make a little pouch with your clothes that has a space of a tefach, a hand's breadth space in the little pouch of your folded garments. The chashivka kli ohel, and then the your little makeshift pouch that you made with your clothes or with a spare shirt or whatever it was is considered like a tent. It has the law of a tent. And that such a tent is considered a separation between the ground and the tefillin. Oh, he's placing them on the ground. Okay. Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bayom Golan Kimin Sefer Merichan Biyado Keneged Libo. Again, we're not the handbreadth pouch. According to Rashi, it seems to suggest that he wraps them up in a shirt or something, or let's say he has a few, he has his tzitzit on and he has his shirt. Then he's in the bathroom. He could take off his shirt and wrap them up in his shirt and put them on the floor. Or if he has nothing else to do, that would be a solution. That's why a person should always have a bag for their tefillin. If a person has a bag for his tefillin, it's a mitzvah actually, then he won't have such a problem. They'll be covered up twice if he's in such a situation where he needs to, God forbid, he has to go into the bathroom with his tefillin. Okay, not God forbid, people travel, it happens in the world, it's part of life. And so as long as you have them in a separate bag that's covered up twice, it's okay. Amar Rabbi Barachanan Rabbi Yochanan Golalan Kamin Sefer Menichan Biado Keneged Libo Huva Laila Oselamen Kis Lahen Kamin Kis Tefach Umanichan. And at night, in the daytime, he wraps them up in his, like I showed you, with the straps are wrapped around, and in the picture. And then he holds them in his right hand against his heart. And at nighttime, he makes a little makeshift tent out of a little shirt, wraps them up a few times. That's considered like a separate little domain. And then you can place them on the floor. Or ideally you should put them up higher, not on the floor. If you have another place, looks around, there's another place to put the tefillin. You can put them up there. Just not in the window if it's facing the public domain, if there's any reasonable chance that people would walk by and steal it. These tefillin have to be guarded. Amar Rabaya lo shanu bechli shehu kilyan, aber bechli she'enu kilyan afilu pachot mitechaf. Abaya said they only taught it must be a one handbreadth pouch with regard to a vessel that is the phylactery's regular vessel. Remember, I said it's a mitzvah to have your tefillin in a bayit. There's a little protective box over the tefillin. And somebody very close to me once, when he first got to tefillin, it took him a month. Nobody told him that he needs to take the tefillin out of the boxes. He put it on a few times during that month. He put them on with the boxes over the tefillin. No, you take them out of the boxes, and so it's just the black leather boxes. There's two boxes, and then over that there's a pouch, and then over that people have another thing to keep their talit and their tefillin. So there's a few layers. So Abaya said they only taught with regard to a vessel that is a regular vessel, but if a vessel is not the regular vessel, he may place the phylacteries in it, even if it is less than a hand's breadth. A hand's breadth is the length of a fist, a potato, from here to here. That's a hand's breadth. Amar Marzutra v'item Ravashi teda shari pachin ktanim matzilim ba'olamed. Marzutra and some say Ravashi said, as proof for that distinction, the laws of impurity state that only a space of at least a hand's breadth can serve as a barrier to prevent the spread of impurity imparted by a corpse. Nevertheless, small sealed vessels less than a handbreadth in size protect the contents from ritual impurity, even if they are inside a tent over a corpse. This proves that even a space smaller than a hand's breadth can serve as a barrier before impurity. Amar Rabbi Barbachana, ki hava azlinan batrei de Rabbi Yochanan, ki hava baya leme'al levetekise, ki hava naket sifra de agadata, hava yahivle, ki hava naket tefilin, lo hava yahivle. Amar hawil v'sharunhu Rabbanan nitran. Rabbi Barbachana said, when we would walk after Rabbi Yochanan, his master, we would see that when he sought to enter the bathroom while holding a book of the Agadah, he would give it to us. When he was holding his phylacteries, he would not give them to us. And he said, since the sages permitted to hold them, they will protect me. Although there were people on hand to whom he could have handed the phylacteries, he kept them to protect himself from danger. This is starting to sound like the guy who walked into the bathroom. If he covers up his shel yad, and maybe he had taken off his shel rosh, and he was holding them against his heart, wrapped up in his coat. I don't know. I think if you're at a place like the Kotel, the holy city is a protection anyway. So I don't think it's such and he's not Rabbi Yochanan. I find it still hard to accept the fact that the great rabbi, his great Rosh Hashiva, explained to me how it was permitted for him to actually do that. If it was a makeshift bathroom, yes. Okay, back to the story. What is a book of Agada? Sefer Agadata. Well, the prohibition against committing the oral Torah to writing was still in force. So it doesn't make sense because there was a prohibition to write down the oral Torah. So how did Rabbi Yochanan have a book of Agada? Is not also the oral Torah? When it was written in a book, I thought that was prohibited back then. It was supposed to be an oral tradition, and writing it down was considered killing it. It was only written down when the generation had descended to such a level that it would have been lost if it wasn't written down as an emergency measure. So while there was still a prohibition to write down the oral Torah, and that lasted for several generations after the codification of the Mishnah, the sages would write down various notes for themselves. They were especially lenient with regard to Agadic books, wisdom teachings, as opposed to halachic books of laws. The Gemara tells of several Amoraim who would carry Agadic books with them, which they would frequently perused, while halachic books were not common at all. The halacha was more of an oral, experiential tradition, as opposed to something gleaned from the experience of reading and thinking. The other one was the oral tradition was speaking, listening, and thinking. The written tradition does this thing about reading, and there's something about committing a living tradition to writing that contains it and could be damaging to it in a certain way. However, it also the same in other respects, but it's not just damaging; it could also protect it. But anyhow, so when Rava Kihava Azlinan Batre de Rav Nachman Kihava Nakit Sifer de Gadata Yahivlan Kihava Nakit Tefilin Lo Yahivlan Amar Huil V'Shanruhu Rabbanan Zatrinan. Same thing. Rava said they would walk after Rabbi Nachman, and they would see that he was holding a book of Agada, and he would give it to us. When he was holding his phylacteries, he would not give them to us. This is all Rava speaking. And he said, since the sages permitted to hold them, they would protect me. So Rabbi Nachman of the Talmud had the same custom, followed the same law as Rabbi Yochanan generations before in the land of Israel. There is a mistake here in the text. It's not Rabbi Nachman, it's Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, yes. Tana Rabbanan, Lo yochaz adam tefilin biyado v'sefer Torah b'zro'o v'yitpalel. V'lo yashtin behen mayim, v'lo yishan behem, v'lo shenet keva, v'lo shenet arai. The sages taught one may not hold phylacteries in his hand or a Torah scroll in his arm and pray, because his concern that the phylacteries of the Torah scroll might fall down, which will distract him from his prayer. And so too, v'lo yashtin behen mayim, v'lo yishan behem, v'lo shenet keva, v'lo shenet arai. And so with regard to sacred objects, one may not urinate with them in his hand, and may not sleep with them in his hand, neither a deep sleep nor even a brief sleep. That's the Chachamim, and that's the proper response to the guy in the Kotel bathroom with his tefillin on. A person can't sleep with his tefillin on. The reason is that he might fall off in his sleep, according to Rabbi Akiva Eger. The Vilna Gaon assumed that Rashi understood it this way. A lot of people understand that one may not sleep with tefillin because one might pass gas in his sleep. So even if one might not pass gas in his sleep, they might fall off. That's according to Rashi and Rabbi Akiva. Amar Shmuel sakin umaot ukara v'chikar hari elok yotzeh behen. Shmuel said, not only should one holding phylacteries refrain from prayer, but all holding a knife, money, bowl, or loaf of bread may have similar status in that his concern that they might fall down and distract him from his prayer. So when you're davening, you can't hold a knife, you can't hold a loaf of bread, etc. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Sheshet, leit hilchata ki ha matnita. Rava said that Rav Sheshet said the halacha is not in accordance with this braita. The halacha is not like the braita which says you can't hold the tefilin while you're urinating, or the hold a loaf of bread while you're praying, or hold the tefillin while you're praying. Sorry. Well, one thing is you can't hold them while you're praying because you're afraid they might fall down and it would distract you. The other, prayer is a very serious thing for the sages. Not just our days going to shul and saying some words and you just say the words. You can think about holding your tefillin and saying the words at the same time. Big deal. No, prayer we were talking about prayer on a much higher level. Amar Rav Sheshet, leitilchata ki haid matita. Teveit Shammai hi de'i beit Hillel hashta beit kisei kavua share beit kisei arai mibaye. Because why is this not the halacha? Rav Sheshet says because it's in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai, and if it was in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel, now Beit Hillel permitted holding phylacteries in his hand. Beit Hillel permitted holding tefillin in his hand when he defecates in the regular bathroom, as it is necessary. So that's according to Beit Hillel. So if he permits this, is it necessary even to say that it is permitted when he urinates in a makeshift bathroom? The Gemara raises an objection. Dvarim shehitarti lach b'kan asarti lach kan. Second part of the Braita says, matters which I permitted you to do here, I prohibited you from doing there. In other words, these are matters which were permitted in a regular bathroom and not in a makeshift bathroom. My love tefillin. What? Is it not referring to phylacteries? Granted, bishlama. Iyamart bishlama Beit Hillel hitarti lachkan. Granted, if you say with the prohibition against urinating while wearing phylacteries is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel, then we would understand the Braita as follows: matters which I permitted to you here, hitarti lachkan kavua. To hold phylacteries, matters which I permitted to you to hold the tefillin in a regular bathroom, I have prohibited you from doing there. Beit kisei arai. Asarti lachkan, bebeit kisei arai. Ela I amrat Beit Shammai, I amrat Beit Shammai. But if you hold that this braita is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai, then they did not permit anything in a regular bathroom. Ha lo sharu v'lo midi. What then is the meaning of the matters which I permitted you to do here? Ki tanya hahi li'inyan tefach utfachayim. Titani chada kashun nifna magalei acharav tefach ulefanav tefachayim v'tanya idach lacharav tefach ulefanav lo klum. The challenge is rejected by the Gemara, which explains when that Beraita was taught, it was not in reference to the tefillin, but it was in regard to the matter of one hand breath and two hands breaths. As it was taught in one Beraita, when one relieves himself, he must maintain modesty and bear a single hand breath of his flesh behind him and two hand breaths before him. As it was taught in another Beraita, one may bear a single hand breath behind him and nothing before him. So when one's sitting on the toilet, one should cover their knees. That is the halacha. It's according to the lenient, that maybe that is the stricter opinion, maybe according to the lenient opinion, as long as you're covered behind you. Vatispara. The Gemara immediately rejects what was just said. How can you understand it that way? Vatispara. How can you understand it like that? I biktanim la'acharav tefach lamali If we're talking about urinating, a person doesn't have to uncover himself behind him at all, unless he's a little weird or something. I don't want to get into it. But we are talking, both opinions refer to defecation. Below kasha, habiish, habisha. It's not a difficulty. One's talking about a man, others talking about a woman. What do we think? We're just talking about men here? We're talking also about women. A man who must bear himself before him to urinate. Well, the other Braita states that one may bear nothing before him, is referring to a woman who needs not bear anything before her in order to urinate. Ihachi hadiktani Allah. Zehu kal v'chomer she'en alav tshuva. This is an a fortiori inference that cannot be rebutted. Meaning that even though logically it would have been appropriate to be stricter in the case of defecating in a regular bathroom than in the case of urinating in a makeshift bathroom, this is not the ruling. According to the distinction suggested above, what is it that cannot be rebutted? What is rebutted? And what cannot be rebutted? That is to say, that is the nature of the matter. Darka de milta hachi ita. That's the nature of the matter. Ela lav tefilin v'tiyufta de Rava amar Rav Sheshit. That is the nature of the matter. Men and women need to bear themselves differently. Rather, it is the Braita which states, matters which I permitted to you here, I prohibited you from doing there. And isn't that not referring to tefillin? And the a fortiori inference that cannot be rebutted is similarly referring to phylacteries. This is a conclusive refutation, a tiyufta, of that which Rava said, that Rav Sheshit said, that the Braita is not referring to phylacteries. So the Braita that we mentioned is indeed referring to phylacteries. What is this about refutation and halacha? Rabbi Steinsaltz writes the difference between a kashya, or a difficulty, or contradiction, and a tiyuvta, a conclusive refutation, is that a kashya with regard to a particular opinion does not disqualify that opinion. It merely kasha what's kasher is putting the tefillin on the right place and keeping them there with the reverse mirror like a quick cam. That's good. So there we go. That's the way tefillin should be on the head. Tiyufta is not like a kasha. Kasha doesn't disqualify an opinion. Tiyufta does. It conclusively refutes and disqualifies an opinion. There are cases of a particular halacha. Do exist rare cases in which a particular halacha remains in place despite the existence of a conclusive refutation contradicting it. From here we learn that when there is an explanation in support of an amora, a refutation from a Braita does not necessarily prove it incorrect. This is the opinion of Rabbi Betzalel Ronsberg, who lives a few hundred years back. Tiyufta, the Gemara concludes, it is indeed a conclusive refutation. So when we're talking about what's talking about tefillin? Okay, let's go back to the Braita. Where's the Breitzer that they're referring to? The Breitzer says, and so too with regard to sacred objects, one may not urinate with them in his hand and not sleep with them. So one opinion says there is a place where you can urinate with tefillin in your hand, if it's covered up and against your heart and so forth. And the other opinion is, no, you may not. So, even though logically it would have been appropriate to be stricter in the case of defecating in a regular bathroom than in the case of urinating in a makeshift bathroom, this is not the ruling. According to this distinction suggested above, what cannot be rebutted? This is the nature of the matter. Rather, the Breitzer states that matters which I permitted to you here, I prohibited you from doing there. Is that not referring to phylacteries? You permitted the bottom line of the law is one who enters a bathroom but has no safe place to leave his phylacteries should remove them at the distance of 4 cubits from the bathroom with their straps, cover them with garments, hold them opposite his heart, and only then enter. He should make sure the straps are not dangling from his hand. When he emerges, he should distance himself 4 cubits before donning them again. That's actually how we do it. And we're going to pause here.